Thank you. So it's good to see faces and familiar names and to be part of this. I think it's now our third Campus RX Symposium. I think it's third, maybe fourth. Anyhow, today I will be talking about two different endeavors that I'm part of, the Wekesa Earth Center and the Nature Health Alliance. Next slide, please. So I'll first start off with speaking about the Wekesa Earth Center. Next slide. So actually, this kind of was an out of a blue endeavor. I received the email July of 2022, and it was from the REI Co-op. And basically, it was an email specifically from Erin Cano and Janelle Hillhouse, who are officers there, and they basically reached out saying, we're interested in learning more about your research as you were recently recommended to us. So we, met for a call, and they basically were saying, what kinds of things, if you got funding from us, would you like to do? And because we didn't have our call until like probably a week or so after I got this email, I was really starting to think, I was like, wow, like what would I want to do? And so kind of born out of my existing work with Nature RX at UMD that I have with my colleague, Dr. Shannon Jetty. And then a course I created, Black Bodies in Green Spaces. I thought, well, maybe let me start a center. So submitted the fund proposal in 2022 and was able to receive funding in 2023. Next slide. So I'm sure maybe this was already discussed at the onset of the symposium today. I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend those earlier sessions, but basically it's a opportunity for anyone who wants to kind of increase and improve equity and belongingness in nature. Next slide, please. And there's like three different categories in terms of the type of funding that REI supports. One is connecting people outside, one is creating space outside, and then the third is centering health outside. And if you go to their website, you can see some of the grantees and the recipients of their funding in the respective categories. Next slide. So basically, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, okay, well, what would I want this center to be and what would I want it to represent? And even something as simple as the name. So Wekesa, it's a East African origin name, basically for births, babies occurring during the harvest season. And when I thought of this, I wanted something to have kind of a representation from the mother continent of all of us. And I wanted this to be a center that was a collaborative effort of scholarship and recognition across a variety of disciplines. I wanted it to promote equity. I wanted to promote reconciliation and an overall healing in nature where there's a belongingness among everyone. Next slide, please. So we launched this Earth Day of this year, 2023. There's going to be three kind of offices, one of research, which will be, doing kind of intramural and extramural nature-based research. The second will be an office of programs. So kind of like will kind of encapsulate some of the work that we're already doing with Nature RX at UMD, but also to really make sure that we expand to the greater Maryland community. So for example, I would like to create a recoloring nature network to promote nature and belongingness, particularly among BIPOC communities. And definitely kind of convene this whole like cadre of scholars that I will talk about momentarily. And then the final is the Office of Recognition. So I'm really, focused on this. I actually have started crafting an enslavement acknowledgement that will kind of be coupled with the land acknowledgement here at UMD. And I wanted to really make sure that there's this kind of opportunity for recognition and atonement in terms of how we relate to land and land-based traumas. And so this will kind of fall in this Office of Recognition. Next slide, please. And then the final kind of arm, in addition to the first three that I just mentioned, will be one that will kind of be a dissemination arm. And I'm calling that Zorbel's Garden. Zorbel was the name of my great grandmother. I never met her, but She was someone who I have heard stories about from my grandfather and from other people in my family. And if you're interested, this is a story about her on the website of the Wekesa Herb Center. But in any case, she was one who was very much into using nature and very much just using a lot of her natural resources to survive. And so I just thought it was appropriate for the dissemination arm to be called Zorbel's Garden. Next slide, please. And so finally, when I was talking about bringing a cadre of scholars, in a couple of weeks, we're actually going to first bring together these scholars at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico. And this will be kind of an opportunity to have this kind of inaugural meeting. We will kind of officially like launch the center, but this will be an opportunity to really engage in a conversation and look at and examine the racialization of nature. We have about, I think about 18 people who will be attending, and we plan to disseminate kind of a summary of what we discussed from the workshop, but also, probably through a peer-reviewed article avenue, but also as one that's more of a lay readers outlet. So look out for more of that. Next slide. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, I'm not sure how I am on time, but I'm kind of go through these quickly. This was another REI endeavor, and this one, okay, I will get back to that rhizomatic thinking in a minute, Don. So the other aspect in terms of an REI funding was Nature and Health Alliance. Next slide, please. So similarly, kind of along the same lines as when REI reached out to me, they also reached out to some of my other colleagues. And it was kind of like through the other colleagues, there's just inspiration to create this kind of alliance, this Nature and Health Alliance with Jay and Naima and me and other folks. I'll show you the slide coming up. But basically, again, we submitted the proposal in 2022 and then received funding in 2023, similar as I discussed previously for the Wekesa Earth Center. Next slide. So this is basically going to be a group of scholars, educators, practitioners, and community members to raise awareness of the value of nature for health, incorporate more nature into our lives, and coordinate group activities, connect with related groups, and then create like a national movement. So we really kind of want to help consolidate and bring some level of cohesion. Next slide. Again, I mentioned Nalini, Bita, Kash. So these are the team leaders. And we wanted to also focus to have like kind of like a revolving leadership. So for example, Jay is the incoming chair. Then I will be the incoming chair elect. And we're going to have this kind of rolling leadership, primarily just to kind of help distribute the responsibilities, but also to kind of have like a geographic type of rolling type of feeling, because you have someone from Utah, then Texas, and then Maryland. Next slide, please. These are our team advisors, and some of these names may also be familiar to you all as well. Next slide. So we actually had a conference earlier this year. I cannot even remember what month that was. I just know it was earlier this year. We were in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we were able to all meet together. Thank you, Jay. We were able to all meet. It was May. We were able to meet all together, and it was a really great opportunity because, a lot of times you get to talk to these people, by Zoom, email, but this was a really great time that we were able to meet and actually do some outdoor activities as well. Next slide. So with that meeting, we met and we discussed, we had breakout groups, but we were trying to come up with a vision, which is right here, is one that states a world in which everybody has access to nature and can sustain the benefits of nature. Next slide. And also a mission. So to enhance understanding of, foster evidence for, and communicate about the relationship between nature and health. Next slide. I think that might be it. Oh yeah, that's it. Sorry, I didn't want it to feel so staccato. It's very different when you're not manning or your own slides. So I just was like, I think that's the last slide. But anyhow, I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jennifer. And for those of us who are in on your secret that you're actually at a college reunion, we are so grateful that you've taken the time out to share all of this wonderful programming with us. So, quick question, what is rhizomatic thinking?
Okay, so I'm gonna try and answer this the best I can. It's funny, my colleague is on, Dr. Shannon Jetty. I don't mean to blast her, but it's kind of like if you think of it in terms of the sense of the actual rhizome. So instead of thinking very linearly, um, in one way, it's like kind of branching out the way almost like the way a rhizome will grow underground,
Hmm.
very all different ways, like here and here and here, and it's not like a linear. So to use that type of philosophy or use that approach in a philosophical way to your thinking can help us kind of think outside the box in terms of having a little bit more fluidity and not be so rigid in the way we think and approach how to solve problems, so to speak. That is a very, I know, elementary type of response to that question, but I hope you're understanding what I'm trying to say.
Thanks so much for that explanation. And the work you do is truly inspiring. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.